Hi, this is Heather Box, the co-founder and CEO of the Million Person Project. And the Million Person Project is a global project about love, storytelling, and connecting change makers. And I am here today, so excited to be here today with Jane Golden, who is the founder and executive director of the Philly Mural Arts Project. And she is joining us today to enter the conversation about personal storytelling. So thank you so much for joining us, Jane. And I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Philly Mural Arts.
Well, hi, and thank you for having me here today. I'm really honored and thrilled. So Philly Mural Arts. So we are an art program, a community-based public art program, totally devoted to making sure every citizen in Philadelphia has access to art. So we are a program committed to creating beautiful works of public art everywhere, but we're also very committed to making sure that vulnerable adults, young people, people in the behavioral health system, people across Philadelphia have access to art education programs, quality art education programs, because we really believe that art has a profound impact on people's lives, and we've seen that over 30 years. And our program has just grown and grown and grown to the point where we have almost 4,000 works of art. We've served almost 50,000 kids since back in the day in the late 80s. And now we're doing all this very innovative work. And I think we're really changing the genre of muralism. So it's like, what is muralism in the 21st century, and how can we apply it to critical needs facing Philadelphia and cities globally?
Wow. Well, I can see why you've been doing this for 30 years. Your passion, I'm like getting so pumped up over here. And for me, I feel so lucky because last year I worked on a project in partnership with Philly Mural Arts, as you know, with Callie Curry, who is the artist known as Swoon. And together what we did was Callie and her team ran a program in Graterford Prison, in a rehab center for addiction, and in the reentry program that you guys run there at Philly Mural Arts. And in those three places, she did these amazing art therapy programs of people telling their stories through art and creating art and sharing stories together. And then I came in to support some of the members to really explore their personal story and their message for the world and hone that and be able to share that in an event that the program culminated in that you spoke at too, where 5 people got up and shared their moving personal story and how it connected to their message for the world. And it was such an incredible honor for me. I was blown away by Philly Mural Arts. I was blown away by the murals that are just all over the city, but I was also blown away by the level of commitment and flexibility that you guys have with your members, and how you guys are really invested in their transformation, and how you really meet people where they are, instead of creating an atmosphere that others enter into.
That's so well said. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's thrilling.
Yeah. And so I would love to hear, what is your personal story in relationship to Philly Mural Arts and this work?
Sure. I went to Stanford. I was a double major, fine art and political science. I was an artist who thought I'd go to law school, but I was also someone who came from a mural-friendly family. When I was young, my parents would show me pictures of murals created in this country during the WPA, or the work of the Mexican muralists. And so I always thought about art's social impact from the time I think I was like 10. And so when I got to Stanford, I was painting large and looking at the work by social realists. And I was also looking at the work of the Mexican muralists. And then I moved down to Los Angeles and saw glorious murals. And I got a job. I decided not to go to law school. I was painting. I found it fairly isolating. And I thought to myself, well, I would love to do a mural. And then one day in the LA Times, I read an article about the LA mural program called Spark, run by Judy Baca. And I applied first they told me I was past the deadline, and I just drove them crazy for like 3 months. I called every day, like, please, please, I want this grant. And finally I got a phone call and I heard someone say, we hope we never hear from you again. Like, stop calling us, but you have the grant. So I took my $300 grant and I ended up painting this mural in Santa Monica and fell in love with mural painting. Standing on that corner at Ocean Park in Maine, talking to strangers about the community, about politics, about their lives was so amazing. And like, I thought at the time, theoretically, everybody should have access to art. But I didn't really understand it till I stood there and was painting that wall. And then that mural turned into another mural, and it was this amazing experience. And I fell in love with mural making and decided not to go to law school. So then I became really, really sick. I have lupus, and I was told I wouldn't live long. And so I came back east to be with my family, and I started coming up to, and it was a terrible time. It was very, very depressing. I left friends behind in Los Angeles, and it's very distressing to suddenly have to accept your own mortality at a young age, because I thought, as many of us do when we're young, you think you're going to live forever. And my life had been a privileged life. And I don't think I really appreciated it till the moment that I was diagnosed. The only way you cope with that kind of serious illness is you have to figure out a way to make peace with it and learn from it and turn it into something that becomes a blessing. And so I didn't quite understand that as I was getting stronger. I understood it when I was hired to run this little art program for the Philadelphia Anti-Graffiti Network in 1984. And I started to work with the kids who were graffiti writers and work with community leaders who eventually became my mentors. And for the kids that I was working with, I realized that we had this great commonality. We loved art. We loved working outdoors. I recognized that they would be great mural painters, but they also felt really like outsiders. And I'm somebody who had never really seen my life that way, but lupus can be very disfiguring. And so I had both discoid and systemic lupus. And I suddenly felt very much like an outsider, had a new perspective about life. And I realized that together, both the kids and myself, that we could sort of heal each other in some strange way. We were vastly different and really similar. And around the love of art, we connected. And so I said for years, I used to say to people, art saves lives. And I think I said it, and later I realized this because in some way it really saved mine. And eventually, like, I started to get better and stronger and connect with these kids, and they informed me in so many ways. And I worked with the community leaders in neighborhoods where the only other visible city workers were the police. I mean, it was nothing except like blight and drugs and violence and gray walls. And suddenly we came in with all our energy and excitement and enthusiasm and asked people, what do you want? This isn't about us. It's not our story. This is your neighborhood. This is your community, and you have the right to control your own narrative. Let's work together. This is co-creating, co-collaboration. And together, we're going to envision something different for this community. And so the art became catalytic. It went beyond anything that I ever would have imagined. Because why? Because people saw their stories on walls. They were suddenly heroes. That's what murals do. They give people the dignity and respect they deserve. And I think this is why I respect what you do so much, Heather, because so much of this was about people's stories, giving dignity to what they had gone through, their struggles, their triumphs, their dreams, their aspirations. You are heroes. Your life counts. And for me, working at Anti-Graffiti was like getting 3 graduate degrees on how to work with the city, how to work with community, how to work with kids, and not go in and do something to people, but instead do something with people. That is the beauty of it. And from there, I learned and I grew, and eventually my lupus went into remission and has come in and out of remission. But I think having that diagnosis, working with citizens of the city many, many years ago, really, it made me a better person and certainly a more responsive executive director.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jane. For me, you know, when I hear truth like that, it's like I can feel it all throughout my body. And it's just like, wow. It's such a blessing when someone's willing to share the why behind who they are in the way that you just demonstrated. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
One of the things that was stuck out to me is this idea that it's like, write your own story, put your story on the wall, like let yourself be seen, put it somewhere where you can see yourself and where others can see you. And that is something when I was working in Philly with Philly Mural Arts in the prison, that is something that was so moving to me, was to see these massive pieces of work that these men were working on, you know, that told their stories in such vivid and moving ways, and that were sitting there as testimony to who they were.
That's exactly right. I mean, that power of self-expression, it's an often intractable issue. And youth homelessness is a huge problem. And so we took over a storefront. We offered programs. We were able to move kids from shelter to permanent housing. And they did art making, print making, music. They did mural making, created beautiful murals. They wrote a book. It was like so many things. And it was so exciting because it was very pragmatic and hugely aspirational. But Heather, when we asked the kids, what was the most important thing we did? And they said, it was for us all about self-expression. It was all about that their voice was heard. It wasn't clothing, it wasn't housing. I mean, those things were important, but at the end of the day, it was their ability to articulate their lives and have others respond to it, to be seen as not other, because we do that really well in our society. We marginalize people. There's stigma that hovers over people's heads. But instead, what we're saying is let's shift that paradigm and make those voices prominent. And when you drive through the city and you see 4,000 works of art, what I love, it is truly the autobiography of the city of Philadelphia. It is a crescendo of people's voices being heard.
And how do you think that affects the people who live in Philadelphia?
Well, I think for them, it's like suddenly they count, they matter, and it's the beginning of something. See, art has this catalytic power, right? So when we started doing like waterfall murals in North Philadelphia back in the day, like 30 years ago, you know, my friends would say, oh, why are you doing waterfall murals? And I'd say, well, this is what people want. People want beauty. And so, but the waterfall mural, I said, this is deceptively complex because this is a political act, because we're doing a mural and people are saying, wait a minute, I was part of that. Look at this filthy lot. We don't want this. We want something else. Let's work together to clean it up. Wait a minute. We want city services. Wait a minute. We want better programs. And so you start to see, like, it's like the opposite of the broken windows theory. It's like success leads to success. And the murals became a sign that people cared and that things could change. It was a beacon, a focal point, and a catalyst for positive change. And that's like fast forward, whether it's a sculpture we're doing, ceramic, mosaic, whether it's temporary or permanent, whether it's we're working with people who do video or working with you and Swoon or whatever it is really underscoring the value of every person in the city of Philadelphia, no matter where you live, no matter your age, no matter your race, no matter your ethnicity, that you matter, that you count, and what you have to say has real value. And it doesn't just have value, it has power. And if you use it intentionally and strategically, we can move the needle on critical issues. The men in the prison, many of them that in this one prison we work, you know, they'll never get out, but they can impact the world by creating public art. When we bring leaders in to talk about criminal justice, they become a think tank. For people coming out of prison, to be able to give them the skills and the tools and the ability to make an impact on the civic life of Philadelphia, their voice is being heard in different ways. For the kids in our art ed program, we want them to study the history of protests. We want them to look at advocacy. We want them to understand the power of muralism in this country and far beyond. And we want them to make their mark on the city in big, bold, beautiful, inspiring ways. We want them to be the change agents of tomorrow. Sorry, I could just get airmail.
I'm like, do it. But
let's go change the world right now for art.
Seriously though, but the thing that's so moving to me is about the idea that your story doesn't just have value, your story has power.
That's right.
To me, that's it. Because, you know, for me working in the prison, at first, when we started the storytelling workshop, that was 5 days. It was what is your message? In the process, a lot that was coming up were cautionary tales, sort of like, don't follow in my footsteps. And I was like, that's not your story. Like, your story is not about what happened to you or what you did. Your story is about who you've chosen to be given that. Why are you the way that you are? Why are you creating this beautiful art? What does it mean to you? Yes, it incorporates pieces of your history and the things you've done and the mistakes you've made and the things that have happened to you and the amazing things that you've done too, you know, but your message lies in how you are in the world. And that was really, really important for me to articulate with the men, especially the men who are in prison for the rest of their lives, is to say, this story doesn't just have value inherently because you're a human. If you tell your truest story about who you are, there is so much power in that. There's the power for anything, you know,
That's right.
for political change, to create a connection with someone that you may never know, for empathy, for motivation, whatever it is.
That's right. And that you don't have to be defined in one way, right? It's like, you did something wrong, but is that how we're always going to look at you? How do we celebrate diversity but lift up commonality? How do we do that, right? And how do we not see the world in terms of divisions and borders and boundaries, and that's them and this is us? Part of what we do is we do it through personal story because it's what humanizes us, right? Because it's not just that it inspires someone, but it also, to me, is somewhat life-changing because we relate, we connect, we bond, we have discussions, sometimes difficult discussions. I can think of some of our more difficult, complex projects that brought together groups that whose paths, not just they wouldn't cross, but they had overt conflict. And it was in listening to each other, in hearing the stories. The art making was almost secondary. That process, that wonderful process that now academics call social practice, that when we would sit in churches and rec centers, or now when we do have neighborhood meetings or community meetings and sit together and talk about our lives, that push and pull that leads to a tangible beauty on walls throughout our city, that's the magic of it. And it starts with that story.
It really makes me curious about who your mentors are. Who's your inspiration? Who have been some of your teachers along this journey?
Well, I think I want to say my parents, I have to start with them because I had really incredible, extraordinary parents who were supportive in every way. And I think they also taught me about being continually humble and gracious. I like to always be grateful. And my father would always emphasize having humility because he said, because no one knows everything. And so I think that developed in me a curiosity and an ability to course correct. And I think that over the years of working in city government, there have been certain people who have been extraordinary role models and mentors for me, from block captains and community leaders to a woman who was the managing director. I mean, they've had a lot of influence on me. And then, there have been, different artists and change makers in the world, that I just really, I think about, am inspired by. And the woman who gave me the first grant to do a mural, Judy Baca, who is this extraordinary muralist and worked with, young people in East LA. And I mean, she was so tenacious and just determined. And I think that I always am learning from people all the time. And I'm really drawn to people who, they don't just talk about issues, but they get out there and they do the work. I'm a very transactional person. I mean, I just, whatever we say we're going to do, we need to do. We need to keep our word. We need to move forward. We're working in a way, even though the city money is just a small part of our overall budget, I feel like we're all public servants working on behalf of citizens in the city. So we work hard, we're tireless, we're advocates. And I think that it's always, and this is the other, I'm always looking too at people who are entrepreneurs, like social entrepreneurs, because I feel like we endlessly have to embrace innovation and creativity, because you know what? Our traditional interventions will fail us. They just will. They always do. And so in order to crack the code, we have to be continually sort of relentless and inventive and embrace creativity. And that to me is so important. So I have an eye out for who are the innovators like worldwide who are doing really good things.
Wow. Yeah. And so one of the last questions that I have is around this idea where you said humility has given you the ability to course correct. And that was something, that was really, for me coming into the project in Philly, I wasn't familiar with the way that you all worked. I was hesitant to go into a prison and a reentry program and a rehab center. I knew I was part of a bigger project, but I didn't want to be flying in for a minute, working with someone and then getting out. I wanted it to feel like a partnership. And that was something that when I was talking with you guys and Callie, that was something that I was really emphasizing. And one of the things that I was so struck by the way that you work, is this sort of ability to course correct, this ability to listen in the moment. And even though you're a big organization, to be able to say, great, we have more time for this now. We heard what you said. This is now what is going to happen. And that, I think, is not something that a lot of organizations do very well as they grow big. So I want to hear a little bit more in closing about why that's so important to you to sort of meet people where they are. What does that give to the world?
Well, I think it makes it so that you're open to the magic and wonder of projects like what you and Callie and her team did. It was totally extraordinary. In my life of doing this work, it was one of the most inspirational moments. So what if we had been inflexible? What if we hadn't been open? I think all the time, we have to be an organization that can be facile, that can go left, that can go right. Because the truth is, we have to keep our eye on the ball. What is the end product? What's the end game here? We want to use art to change the world. That's a big goal. That's a big aspiration. And it's not easy. It's complicated and it's really messy. There is no easy way to do this. And I always say to people who work here, this is not for the faint of heart. Someone said working at Mural Arts is like working on a political campaign, except there's never an election. Because we're always advocating for what art can do. But in order to meet those goals, in order to create change, you have to be able to be open, to listen, to really be able to think, oh my God, that is a great idea. When you and Callie came with that idea, it was like, oh yes, we recognized it instantly. What it does is it drives us to continue doing that. When we started with the city, I thought to myself, I never want to be one of those big departments that's like a dinosaur that you can't turn, you can't move, you can't be open. And so we're like sponges here. We're always sort of absorbing things because we believe deeply and passionately that art can ignite change and transformation. I believe that with every bone in my body, but I also know in order to get there that we have to be fearless and courageous, tenacious, dedicated, and absolutely all the time be open to change, because the road is it's just because I know how tricky and complex the world is, but I also know at the other side, when you get there, that the rewards are huge.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jane. Thank you for speaking with me today. And also thank you for showing us what dedication to something looks like and what it can produce in the world. I mean, 30 years, that's incredible. And it's a really big inspiration to me to follow my heart and see it through. So thank you so much. And if you would like to tell our viewers how they can find out more and stay in contact with you and your work.
Sure, muralarts.org. Please stay in touch. We're doing wonderful new things all the time. Things are evolving and changing and growing. And Heather, thank you. I'm so happy to have met you, to work with you, and to be part of your organization. It's so exciting, and I believe deeply in what you're doing. And we try to put it to work, people's stories, every day at Mural Arts.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jane. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.